All right, so today we're doing Java 4 lesson 6, and today we're learning about constants. And this is going to be a short lesson since there's not much to say about it. Yeah, so it's going to be a short lesson, but it's pretty important, like side information, since you could use it, you don't have to use it, that kind of thing. Right, so constants, you might have heard this before, and because I mentioned it in earlier lessons, and they're basically just regular variables that can be changed to whatever, regular variables can be changed to whatever value you want, but constants are variables that can't be changed once it's set. So like think constants. Constant means the same, and that's why they're named that, because they can't be changed once it's set initially. So these, again, are one of the things that can go in interfaces, which is the thing I mentioned. Constants are the thing I mentioned when we were talking about interfaces. So constants can go anywhere except its own. So what I mean by that is that it can go within the main method, it can go in the public class, it can go in another class, but it can't be on its own, as in it can't just not be in a class. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So it always has to be in a class, but otherwise it can go anywhere it wants. Okay, so otherwise, they work exactly the same as regular variables, meaning that you can add it to other variables. You can use it as a counter. Actually, no, you can't do that. But like, you can use it as like a limit. It can do everything except for change. That's the only thing it can't do. So example of how to set it, you can see is in this. So in Java, we do final and then data type name equals value. So the keyword for constants in this case is final, but I know that some other languages, they use const or constants. And I think it's important to make the change because I think a lot of languages do const as their constants. So just make sure that you understand that for Java, it's final. That's for constants. And you can see here that you can also just print out constants if you wanted to, and it'd print out the 1 for this one. Okay, naming conventions. There's naming conventions for every single type thing. So there's naming conventions for constants as well. So yeah, so there's specific naming conventions for these as well, but you just have to notice that naming conventions, they're only naming conventions. You don't have to do them, but generally, if you're gonna start programming like big time, then it's always good to start doing naming conventions since there's gonna be a lot of people looking at your code and you need to make sure that they understand, or at least it makes it easier to understand. So usually constants should be ordered with all capitals. And if there are breaks between words, they should be signified by underscores. So you could see back here in this pi, then I capitalize all the words, all the letters, sorry. But if I wanted to name it pi, like 2 pi's, then I have to do pi underscore and then another pi with capital letters. So generally, that's what the name convention for this is. The things you can and can't do are the same as with regular variables, except, again, like you add the fact that it can't change once it's set. And then again, you can declare constants in interfaces as well. Okay, so purpose of constant. I think maybe you guys could think of it on your own as well, but just gonna go over it again. So mainly, if you try to access the constant after you declare it when you're not supposed to, then you will get an error. So usually this concept is used when you have a set value that you don't ever want to change, such as pi or e, since they're already set in and you can't really change them like after they're already there, since that would be like violating math laws. But yeah, so generally those are the kinds of values that you don't want to change. There could be other ones, so maybe, for example, I'm trying to think. If you had the name of a book that you really liked and you saved it in a string, then you're probably not going to want to change it, like allow others to change it. So because it's always going to be like that. So generally that could be a constant. But generally, by making it a constant, you're just preventing yourself from accidentally changing something later on in your program and causing errors. Yeah, so if you have like 1,000-line code, then, and you have like regular variables for the whole thing, then you could very well accidentally change something and then mess up the whole program because of that. And you're probably not going to want to go decoding like 1,000 lines of code. So yeah, so constants make it a little bit easier with how you're going to get an error, a specific error on a specific line about what you've done, so that in that case, it makes it easier to decode later on, and also makes it less worrisome. Okay, so calling a constant directly from it. I just wanted to review it so that since I talked about how you could call static methods the same way, just wanted to like go over constant again. So again, like the same way you'd call a static method from an interface, you call a constant. So if you remember how you call a static method from an interface is you do like the interface name and then dot the static method name and then parentheses and whatever parameters that go within that. So that it works the same with static methods and classes, but just wanted to go over it. So for example, if you had an interface random that contained a constant sum, so how you would call it is something like this. So random.sum. And yeah, it's basically the same as static methods, but instead of parentheses, you don't have parentheses. And it would do the same thing though. It would call the sum constant and do whatever you wanted to do with that. So again, it's always the name of whatever it's in, no matter what it is. So if it's an abstract method, you can abstract class, you can still do that. If it's an interface, you can still do that. If it's a class, you can still do that. And then the name of the constant. So no, this might be different if the constant is private. So if you like, it's possible to set it as private. And if it's private, it might work differently. You can't do private constants inside interfaces, I found out. So never do privates inside the interfaces, since, I mean, I guess it's kind of like because generically it's already set as public, so you can't really change that. But except you could probably do private methods, but point is, don't do private constants inside interfaces. You can also call a constant through an object of the interface subclass. So again, what that means is that if you had a subclass that implements the interface, then you could call the constant through there. So if you had the object name, then you could call like the object name dot constant, and then that would work the same way. But generally, this one's the more direct way, and it doesn't require a constant. Sorry, doesn't require an object to do it. So if you're in a rush and you didn't have an object of the subclass, then you can always just do this line. All right, that is the end of this. So in a second, we'll be doing class problems. All right, so this is the class problems. And again, mainly had the other students do it. So giving them credit for it after, and then I can write their names fully in. But generally, this is the problem I created. So do that one first. And then comprehension questions were the students' problems. So these are some of their problems. And there's also the programming part. And you can see that like one of those students created it again. So try to do all of these. These are all good practice. And it's a short lesson. It's not really that big. So that's why you can see some other elements in here. But generally, it's still a pretty important topic, even though you're probably not going to use it too much. But yeah, it's still important. So make sure you do them and that you understand it. Otherwise, that would be it for this lesson.